it too?
Strange.
Yeah, I don't. And we're live. That was fast.
Okay. Hello. Happy Thursday, everybody. How are you, Tiffany?
I am good. I love that Gil is here and he's like, does everyone have their pre-happy hour drink? Is that because we're generally late? I mean, we are generally late, but
That is a legitimate reason. I had my pre-happy hour White Claw. Now I'm having my happy hour White Claw. So, are you having anything?
I have a iced coffee.
That doesn't really count unless it's spiked, does it?
It's not spiked, but the problem is, in addition to having this, we have like mandatory family happy hour that is still happening.
It
Oh
looks,
dear.
by the way, like we have a mystery guest who's like in the dark or like a witness
Right,
confession.
that's what I was saying. That it's oh God. I don't know what's happening.
Okay. Well, there's weird. Okay, Danielle is having white wine that she good for you that you snagged from your mom's house. That's the best way to do it. I like it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to answer questions. We are literally having a live stream meltdown here.
Okay.
So
Well,
people can
I
see
can
you.
talk. There's just
So
no video, or
no, it's just like showing like my desktop and it's
your
amazing. Now we're back to
iMessages.
mystery guest. I don't know what's happening.
Okay. Well, okay. So I figured today, in addition to whatever we've had guests the last few times, what is going on here? Do we need to like restart this, or is this a
Well, you're just watching all the drama that I just lived through. So no, now we just have our mystery guest. So it's like we saved
okay?
somebody
Now
a
it's just
seat.
mystery,
I don't know what to do about it.
and
Sorry.
now we're just back to the usual good tech. So excellent. Okay. So we figured today we would talk a little bit about credit card strategies in light of everything going on, because frankly, at this point, I'm having a hard time keeping track of things. So I feel like maybe some other people are as well, in addition to whatever other fun topics or questions. Can we have a happy hour? Winston and Freya as guests one day. What credit cards did they apply for? Well, Winston would definitely get the. No, he doesn't actually like going to Petco, so I'm not sure that would be the card he would get. He would get the. If
Winston
Turkish
would get a
Airlines.
card that was good for like stay-at-home activities and stay-at-home activities only because he does not want you to travel. He doesn't want you to go to dinner. Like quarantine is the best thing that ever happened as far as Winston's concerned.
He would get any card that earns transferable points that could be transferred to Turkish Airlines because he loves Turkey. So I think that would be his optimal. He might be confused about the logistics, but I think that would be his key. Anything involving Turkey, he's in for. So what would Freya get?
Mm. Mm. Right now she's sleeping, so I can't wake her up and ask her. It's interesting though because my our last dog in a simpler time had credit cards issued in her name. She was an authorized user on several different cards, but it's not really the case anymore. It was just things like I don't remember what card it was, but it was like you got like 5,000 points for adding an authorized user, and I didn't have anyone to add who I trusted to get a credit card. So I was like, I'll just add it for the dog because it's not like you had to put a social security number in or anything. Like there was no like fraud or illegitimateness. And then it was fun because when we went to the UAE, we left our dog with my mother-in-law and left her with that credit card, and she did successfully use it to like buy dog food, and they were like, can we see your ID? And she's like, well, it's the dog's credit card. I'm like, see, here's her name.
Bet they hadn't seen that before. That would
No, no, but they
you
loved
know,
it.
dogs need like IDs and things, so that would help. But okay, there's a few questions here that are good. Should we go with Ryan? That's an interesting.
About limited service properties.
Yes. Do you put the questions up still? Is that
I
still a
do.
thing?
I do. So
Okay.
I can say, Ben, why do you hate limited service properties so much? And I can insert some commentary about like you spoiled coastal elite when they are usually more full service than the full service properties. Limited service properties offer free parking, they offer breakfast to everybody, and in many cases, they also offer free internet, which the Four Seasons would charge you like $48 for.
Okay, that is a great question. So first of all, I do not hate limited service properties. That's number one. Number two, I agree they offer more value in many ways. I would say they don't always offer free parking, don't always offer free breakfast. Some do, some don't. But at a Hyatt Place, New York City, you're still going to pay for parking versus their full service hotels that don't charge. It's not that I hate staying at them. It's that I think they're generally like very, very, very cookie cutter, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But like every Hyatt place everywhere is the same. I love the consistency, but like there's zero of anything that's interesting to me about a limited service property. I love, for example, Loft. I love because I think they do a really good job delivering consistently because like all the rooms are basically the same, and that's true of many
Right.
limited
Well, and
service
the
brands.
same thing with like Hyatt Place. There's like Hyatt Place 1.0 and 2.0, and that's the only
Yes,
variation.
yes. So
So,
I love the consistency. I don't hate them at all. It's just they're never interesting to stay at because sometimes you stay at another hotel, you might be delighted. Like even if we're talking, not that any Marriotts are that amazing, but like there are varying experiences versus like I've never been
well, I'd say
super
it's
disappointed.
actually the same thing as staying as at like a vanilla Hilton, Marriott,
Yeah,
Hyatt, right? Like you know exactly what you're getting, and there's
yeah,
some benefit to like, okay, I know what the amenities are going to be. I know what brand of the alarm clock they're going to have.
exactly.
Yeah, and there's
No, and
times
that's
that you
right,
want that, but it's like not interesting and probably
and I
not
think
even fun to review.
no, they're not. That's the thing. Is it's so much the same thing every time that like it's easy to review, but it's not interesting because it's the same thing. But that's why I love sort of the independent hotel brands that belong to the major hotel groups because you get the benefits of elite status. It's like on my recent road trip, I stayed at the Curio Collection property in Moab, Utah, which was like gorgeous and nice, and you get benefits, and you don't feel like you're staying at a Hyatt place. So, which I like staying at Hyatt places, but that is thank you, Gil. Okay, goodness, this is I feel like it's a I
Aww.
don't know what this feels, but that's very sweet. But okay, Tiffany, what's
But
your
I love
favorite?
that you're pointing out this is the best use of the monthly Amex streaming credit because I, as somebody who has not had a television since like 2007, because it was too big to move and we just never replaced it. I also don't stream anything. So I'm like, what do I use this streaming credit for? So this is,
That's very sweet. Thank you, Gil. That's Tiffany. What is your favorite limited service brand?
ooh. Okay, so this is really complicated. Um, because like I do like the version 2.0 Hyatt places. Like those work well for me. I like that they have like a nice sectional couch and generally like a blanket. Like that works well with my vibe of wanting to blanket and do that. But I did I'm like embarrassed to say this. I did stay at the Moxie in East Village, and if they had any brand consistency at all, I think I would love it. Because that particular property had like everything that we love about the Aloft in like a pocket sized cool for East Village kind of way, and I just like I loved it. It was really enjoyable, and it was attached to an amazing restaurant, so you got like the best of both worlds. They had a
The Moxie was featured last. I believe that one was featured last week on Real Housewives of New York, if I recall correctly, because
okay,
they were having their
I should
Halloween.
maybe write up the review of that. Like I because I've been sort of chipping away at trip reports. Maybe I'll review that. I was there in December, and like if that was the pitch for the Moxie brand, I totally understand why executives got excited about it. We're like, this is people will love this because I am a millennial and I loved that Moxie. But if it were like the
Vienna
one you
Airport,
stayed
not so
at in
much.
Vienna was a complete tire fire, like
Yeah,
nobody would like that.
yeah. That's I also think we need to start renaming certain types of things. Like for example, they shouldn't be called limited service because they're actually full service, more full service. It's the same as how limited service basically means they don't
Like
have a
low cost
restaurant.
carrier, but like somehow it's
Exactly.
5 times the price.
Exactly. Low cost carrier, like that's just not intended to reflect the services or price offered. I mean, that's just the name that at some point made sense, and the industry has evolved to the point that it kind of they need a new name. So I don't know what we can come up with. The
Carriers that don't pay their crew.
that's there you go. Exactly. That's probably the better way to go about it. So that is. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Aman Sfeti Stefan is in a slightly different league, I would say, than as Kevin pointed out, than limited service property. Great property, very cool. Yes, that is. Um, oh, there was. Yeah, internet. What hotels do any hotels like? I remember 10 years ago, like most hotels were still charging for internet. What do any hotels anymore charge for internet?
Yes.
If you
In fact,
remember,
I would go so far as to say the more expensive the hotel, the better odds are that they are charging for internet.
generally
Like
true for
like
sure.
the higher they think of themselves, the more highly they think of themselves, Like I think Four Seasons, if you're not booking through a preferred partner,
They
they
offer free
charge.
basic internet now for everybody. They just offer premium as for suites, but they do now, as far as I know, offer everyone free basic internet, which is not that exciting, but I
And I would
believe
assume like the luxury collection properties, if you're not, a Bonvoy member, like all of those things.
that's yes. That is
Okay.
correct.
So people have asked about this. Danielle's asking now, but people have asked a few times over the past couple weeks, like, do you think that things like 524 are going to go away, or that Chase will let people wait less than 4 years to get the reserve if they already have the preferred, given that spending is down?
Yeah, probably not, unfortunately. So, if anything, they're tightening up on credit in some ways because they don't want to be as exposed as they were. So, for example, apparently within the past few days, what Chase now, if you want a credit line increase, that counts towards the 524, or they check your 524 limit, which I think reflects the fact that even though business is down for them, they want to tighten their belt a bit and don't want to necessarily extend a lot more credit. So, unfortunately, it would
Right.
not
A
count
lot of
on.
these banks did not pass their stress tests, even with record amounts of deposits. So there's a lot of caution.
We'll see how it goes. But I mean, I think there's a difference also between what is going on right now, which is just pure uncertainty, and between that and a recession and a depression and a whatever it might be and a booming economy. So I think this is different than what could eventually become the new norm. Like sometimes in a recession, yes, they might tighten credit, but they might make it easier to get new card members. It depends on the situation. But I think right now it's just such an uncharted territory that they're tightening up. So hopefully it's not like that forever, but we will see.
Additional thoughts, I'll link to where you wrote about it on the AAdot response.
Yeah, I mean, somebody at American Airlines must have had a lot of fun, or I don't know if was it an outside. Somebody said it was an outside legal company. So this is regarding the Citi. How do you even explain this? That I guess that people were opening up Citi AAdvantage accounts. Tiffany, do you want to? How does one explain this in 30 seconds? I'm like,
Okay,
this is
well, I
so.
mean, it's interesting because like for a long time, you could get multiple Citi AA cards at a time or in a year, and it was fine. Like no one cared. Like when the executive card had like a 100K bonus, like we both got multiple cards, like it was fine. You're like, as long as you pay your annual fee, no one cares. And then AA changed the rules to have the bonus be in a certain number of months, before you could get it again. And Citi's technology maybe didn't catch up with that rule, and some people got greedy. I think. I mean, I don't want to be judgy, but it's like we like to take advantage of opportunities, but sometimes you take it overboard. And so, like these particular people who filed a DOT complaint on behalf of their mom, which makes me really sad because I'm pretty sure that she didn't know anything about it.
And now her name is out there, so
Yeah,
that's
and like just her kids asked for her social security number and we're like, we're gonna get you some miles. But they opened like upwards of
45
40.
cards.
Well, and it
Yeah,
said 45 cards, then it kept listing like this does not include and this does not include.
yeah,
So it was
and
like
one.
60 some odd cards in a short interval of time utilizing various shenanigans. So,
So I will say a few things because first of all, I think all of this is a slippery slope where there are times where even credit card issuers encourage you to get multiple cards of one. I mean, if you take an
mhm.
Alaska Airlines flight back in the day, they used to, hey, you can get this, the Alaska Visa credit if you've already had one, and they have encouraged that in many ways. So it is a very slippery slope. Obviously, there is a fine line between somebody opening up 45 accounts and somebody maybe opening up a few over time. So I think there's a spectrum of people here who have engaged in various levels of this. Certainly, I think there's something to be said for the fact that they let this go for a long time. So I can completely understand in a way, as a result, that some people thought they could keep going for a long time because
Right.
the airline wasn't cracking down, whatever. But I mean, in this case, in the balls it takes to file a DOT complaint when,
Right.
especially the best part of this, by the way, is.
Angry.
Oh, sorry, what did you say?
No, no, no. Go ahead. You should finish your thing.
The best part of this was, the actual DOT complaint was over the fact that they refused to reinstate the mileage into a different account after they closed the first account because they thought they were going to outsmart American Airlines corporate security. So the extent to which they pushed their luck here was extreme. So it's one thing if somebody filed a DOT complaint who, I think there are some people who kind of got caught in the middle a little bit and maybe opened one or two cards they shouldn't have. But these people with the number of cards, good for American, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's the thing. Like, this should not have been a DOT complaint, and that's part of my like general frustration right now with the lack of civics education in this country. Like, the Department of Transportation does not regulate loyalty programs. Loyalty programs are separate from the transportation aspects of a company. So, like, you may have had more success if you were filing this complaint with the federal agencies that actually do regulate banks and things like that, because your concern about like canceling accounts and things like that is with Citi and the FTC, not with American Advantage. But like, nobody understands that.
Thank you, guys. Goodness, I didn't know we were doing like a. Sorry, I don't know how people usually make money in creepy ways online on video in some way. So
I mean, there are some people who they do these and they only actually answer questions from people who do like the super chats or the stickers.
I mean, that's well, thank you guys. And that's a very cool. Now, what does it take to get the cool GIF or GIF? How do you prefer? Are you a GIF person?
I'm a GIF because you don't give someone a gift.
I mean, true, but yes, okay. I'm with you. Okay. Whatever I guess that's a GIF, the bird. Very cool bird, Justin. Thank you.
Oh, I can't see it, but you can see it.
Oh,
you can
okay,
see it, and the people watching on YouTube can see it.
Oh, there's a bird.
I get the like
very cool
accessibility version.
Okay.
Okay, so people have asked, I mean, do we have anything else to say about AAdvantage?
What do you guys think about the DOT complaint? I'm curious. So,
yeah. Can I do a poll? Probably not. That seems like advanced live streaming. You'd think I'd know, like 4 months into this. Which also, like, that's an interesting thing. Like, the thing that we thought we were going to do for a week because it'd be fun.
Oh, life. Ooh.
Right. If this ends up being our last live stream for a while, like, that's why. Because it's like, oh man.
Yeah, that's gift type is a super sticker. Wow, cool. Good to know. So, what other question what was the?
So, I think. Sorry, I wanted to go in order here, but it doesn't matter. So talking about just like credit cards, one, I think we should talk about points fatigue because a couple of people have mentioned that. Just talk about that. And then somebody's saying, hey, Ben, I'm considering getting either an Amex membership reward card or a Citi card as I don't have one. Also tempted to get the AA Citi Platinum Select, but I do have some American points on hand. I'd appreciate any thoughts on this.
Sorry, okay, I'm reading the, okay. I mean, that's a very open-ended question. It's a good question. But, I mean, Amex versus Citi, do you have Chase cards right now? Could we get a little more information? What other, because it depends
let us know,
on what else is in your wallet.
what other cards you have, or if that's just it. If you're brand new getting started, that's a maybe different, or if you like.
And what do you spend money on? What are your biggest spending categories? Then we can give a better answer.
Okay, so we'll circle back to this. In the meantime, yes, only $19,925 more.
I'm going to get my Amex in a second because we have like several of them in our household. I only use one for like Hulu and something, so I didn't know this worked. So
yeah, so we'll give them to Ford and have them do that. Like, you can't do it when you're logged in because I'm pretty sure
that's
yeah, Drew, I'm with you. Like, if you open like 60 cards, the hubris of filing a DOT complaint, and like, don't be that guy. Okay, so has Chase and Hilton cards right now, thinking about membership rewards or Citi or an Advantage, spends money on travel and food. Where are you traveling to?
Travel and food.
In my very judgy.
So I would say, I mean, I guess, what are you looking for that you don't have in your current Chase card? So the way I would view it is, what cards do you have right now, and what are you hoping to accomplish short of this, other than the sign-up bonuses from new cards? So if you have, for example, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, then you're probably pretty set with dining and travel because that's 3 times points. So Amex or Citi, I mean, Citi cards, does the Citi Premier still have a 60K bonus or something, 50 or 60K?
I don't
Like the
even
Citi
know.
Premier
It's hard to get right
has,
now, is the other thing.
oh, that's true. Citi is tough right now. But so I think the best approach in general to take is also how can you combine those points with the ones you have right now? So for example, Chase and Citi have some transfer partners in common. So if you're going to earn points with Citi, ideally you want to find a way you can combine them towards one redemption or towards some valuable travel perk. So I would say maybe the Citi Premier, depending what you're going for. I love the Amex Green. It has a $150 annual fee, but you get a $100 clear credit, $100 lounge buddy. I know that's not worth a lot right now, but you have also a $10 per month cell phone credit that started in May, so you got $80, basically up to $80 out of that. So
I also think the Amex Gold, like we haven't talked about it a lot, but when we were putting together those posts and like what are the best cards right now for restaurants and the best cards for groceries, it's like the Amex Gold isn't the best card if you're looking at just the earnings rates, but it is like the number two card for both those categories. So if you're spending a lot right now on groceries and restaurants and you're sort of weighting that, plus it's a membership rewards card.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I love in general, I guess, if you already have a Chase flexible card, I would maybe think more of, at least long-term, hotel cards that could add value. Because like I love holding onto hotel cards. I don't spend much on them, but the annual free night certificates are consistently worth so much, kind of like with the Hilton Aspire, but you have a Hilton card. Like, for example, the Hyatt card, IHG card, I love those because I consistently get more value than the annual fee out of the free night certificate alone. So I think the more hotel cards, the merrier. Obviously now maybe a little bit less, but long-term, that's at least my take. I will say, okay, can we talk for a second generally about credit cards?
Yeah.
Just stepping back, because see, I feel like I'm like frustrated with credit cards because of the amount of perks they're offering, and it's kind of tough to keep track of them because
Yeah,
you know
I'm actually super mad that I basically missed out on the 5 times points on the Sapphire Reserve at grocery store things because like I couldn't get Nick on board, and he's the one who's been going to the grocery store, and he's not an authorized user on that card because why would I pay that fee? Um, so it just never happened, and like we're actually going to go and do an Airbnb stay, and so I should have last week, gone and purchased like a whole bunch of Airbnb gift cards at the grocery store for 5 times points, and then paid myself back at 1.5. But it's just like, I'm with you, Suki. Like I am just totally points burnout. Like whatever. I've got millions
I
of
mean
points, and I am staying home. So
at this point you can basically earn 5 times points on like everything when you either directly or indirectly, and it's like why am I supposed to get excited about 5 times points on Amazon? Like I get that all the time anyway.
right,
So
right. Even like my Citi Prestige sent me things like 5 times points for just online purchases up to like $5,000 worth of things. And it was like, okay, because actually you buy literally everything online right now. So like homedepot.com and target.com. And
there are a lot. Okay, I'm going to save my rant for a bit because there's a lot of good questions. So I'll let you
no,
filter
I
through.
think that's good. So like how are you sort of filtering or prioritizing or deciding like what cards to use? Assuming that like you're starting with a baseline of a couple million miles, like a lot of people are who are like, I have so many points, I'm not spending them. You can get 5 or 10 or whatever times points on freaking everything. What do you actually do?
So I think even stepping back, my issue is I do like a very careful like cost benefit analysis of each card every year when the annual fees due. I'm like, okay, well, this is my incremental value I'm getting out of it. So for example, I have the Citi Prestige, which I use for dining. That's basically the main thing I get out of it. It has a $4.95 now? Is it $5.25? Why can't I keep track of this stuff anymore? Whatever it is, we'll say $4.95, give or take. And
It's
it has
roughly 4 times the benefits that the card currently provides.
well, and at this point, so it used to be the amazing fourth night free benefit. It
Mm-hmm.
used to be like all of these things. It used to be it was the card I used for airfare because 5 times points and travel insurance, but now there's no travel insurance. But so now it's basically a card I use for the 5 times points on dining, and I deduct the value of the annual travel credit from the annual fee, and like it works out for the most part. But now we're seeing all these cards like offering further bonuses. So I'm like, how do I really decide when my annual fee is due? Especially with all these other bonuses being limited time, how do you decide, like, do I keep this card or not? And there's no right or wrong answer because we don't know how these benefits will evolve.
Right.
And like,
I think it's actually really important to track. I was going through my Amex tracker today and like checking off my little things because I'm like, paying $10 on my mom's phone bill and just like, doing all the things. Because I have, with Google Fi, my phone bill's like $19 because I'm not going anywhere. So, and doing that, it was like, I think it's really important to actually track this year rather than talking about like the theoretical value that people are getting from their cards. I think that's important. Like the Hilton Aspire, I think it's a great card. I love it. Like it's a card that I would never really consider getting rid of. And that's a little irrational because I'm
I
getting,
will.
well, but like just think, like I would never consider getting rid of it. But it's a little irrational because like I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
How many Hiltons am I really going to stay at where diamond status would be of value versus like the Homewood Suites where you all get the same nothing? The priority pass benefit is worth nothing, but like I love that card in general, and I like think that the airline credit is really valuable. And like if in my gut, I feel like if it came down between like the Aspire and the Prestige, I should keep the Aspire. But like that's not really rational, and I should probably be tracking like how much value I'm truly getting out of those cards.
Which is a good point. The Aspire is a card specifically that I will. I don't want to say that's what's the polite.
But
I will.
you want
I
to
will
keep
go to
it,
bat for
right?
the Aspire.
Yeah,
So
and I feel the
okay.
same way. But like from a math
Yeah.
perspective, I don't know that it makes sense.
Well, so this year we have. So let's talk about the Aspire for a second specifically, because obviously this year is an off year for the Aspire, sort of. But you have the $250 resort credit that can now be used towards restaurants or dining or takeout or delivery. And for those who do spend, I know you cook constantly
Well,
rather than.
but I did use it. I do cook constantly, but I did use it to buy steaks from a local steakhouse, and it's helping like the restaurant because they've everyone there's supply chain issues still with commercial stuff.
Yep.
So I bought steaks, um, really amazing prime steaks that I will cook
So
myself.
So we'll count that at face value. So
Yeah,
450 minus 250. So it's $200 a year right now. And yes, the free night certificate, you can't use it now, but it's now valid for 24 months, which is very generous. And like you will certainly, hopefully, go somewhere fun within 24 months. I mean, if we're not going to go anywhere within 2 years at all, then it's probably a different story. But if you can go to any even halfway decent Hilton in the next 2 years, that alone covers it. In my case, there's the $250 airline fee credit. The Amex has obviously clamped down a lot on how that works. I did purchase a bunch of 500-mile stickers, and those were still reimbursed automatically because Ford is not executive platinum, so it works out because for companion upgrades I have to pay for. So
right.
like that's good as cash. So those two things alone is $500 of value. The two $250 credits. So that outdoes it for me. So you have to find a creative way to use your airline fee credit, I think, is the
Is the part of it? Yeah.
is part of it probably. But that's so Bill. Ken, I think is switching to prestigious here. So I would like to travel insurance. Yes. So I'm
So
thinking
we're
of
talking about
switching.
switching to prestige. It's crazy because one of my COVID activities has been filing, catching up on paperwork, right? Like I did the like lost property thing for both of us of just like random money and filing travel insurance complaints for things that I had to cancel. And I had booked a lot of travel for other people on my prestige card that then didn't happen. And it was all booked under the old benefit terms. And it was so amazing. Like everything, I've just been getting checks from Citi for all of that. And it's amazing. So that like the lack of that in a situation like this where you can actually see like here's the impact is a real sort of a real deal
Well, that's the
breaker
thing.
for
I
me.
think there are well-rounded cards with sort of a one size fits all thing, and then there's others that aren't as well-rounded. Like the Chase Sapphire Reserve in an age of travel is very well-rounded because it's great for purchases in general in terms of the points you earn. It's great in terms of the travel coverage and purchase protection it offers. The Citi Prestige for me at this point is not a card that's well-rounded. It's a card I have for very specific reasons, and those reasons used to be much more justifiable when we were constantly going to restaurants.
Right. Right. But it's hard. Like you wouldn't put airfare on it anymore, would
No,
you? Given
absolutely
the
not.
lack of travel benefits? Yeah.
Well,
So
I have
it's
the Amex
like,
Platinum, so now I do 5 times points on there and get travel coverage. So for a while I thought like the Amex Platinum was only marginally worth it, but now I think it's more worth it again for airfare.
Because it has, yeah. So, and for people who are just sort of catching up on that, the Amex Platinum for several years now has had like no travel coverage at all. Sort of crazy. Like for a
Mhm.
while, you could like purchase additional travel coverage if you opted in, and then you paid like a per ticket fee, and then for a while there was nothing.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's really hard to justify using anything else.
And then regarding the second question of if we get rid of the Hilton Inspire, how long do we have to wait until we're eligible for the bonus again? If ever, Amex has a once in a lifetime rule on all their cards, unless there's specific language suggesting otherwise. So a lifetime, though, is typically defined as, expected to be never, but generally it's 7 years or so from when you close it is apparently when it falls off completely, but that's not guaranteed. So don't expect anytime soon to be able to get another bonus on it.
Lindsay asked, she's been really wanting to get a Citi thank you points card. She has none, but you're saying they're hard to get right now. Lindsay, let us know what other cards you have and sort of what your credit profile looks like broadly. Citi has just tightened their underwriting for consumer cards a lot, like more aggressively than some of the other card issuers. So I tried to get a double cash. I'm like, I've had 2 new cards in the past 2 years. Credit score well over 800 and instant decline. Like it wasn't even 2 seconds. It was just
That's
like
just
boom,
crazy. That's
instant
nuts.
decline. Yeah, my husband has never had a Citi card, and the same thing, like instant decline. And I even like used a VPN, so it wasn't coming from the same AP address or same IP address. And so instant decline with excellent credit. So I don't know, but like with Capital One, it's oftentimes easier to get their cards if you have less than excellent credit. Like Capital One is looking for more like very good. And I don't know if that's like Citi has shifted their window, but it's just very hard. Yeah. So Kevin's calling me out on my earlier thing. Yes, I could use my Chase Ink Business Plus to buy Airbnb gift cards at Office Depot for 5 times points, but I could not then pay myself back for those Airbnb gift cards, which is something that you can do right now with the Sapphire Reserve. You can pay yourself back at 1.5 cents for grocery purchases. So that would have been a good play for using like my ultimate rewards for Airbnb. And I didn't do it because I'm disorganized and have points burn out.
Fair. Also, regarding what Drew said about Amex fee credits, you would think Amex would at this point come up with some other alternative for fee credits because with airlines waiving change and cancellation fees on many tickets, like that was the one legitimate good use of those generally. But that's not even a thing right now, thank goodness, for the most part. Depends on the airline, I guess. But one would think that they should come up with something there. But I feel like that is something that's created anyway to create breakage. So
Yeah,
I don't think you want to offer anything near face value for that. So
no. It does. They do work for little things.
yeah,
Um, Sorry, I just got really distracted because somebody came to the door, and Nick and I have you guys have an apartment, so you don't have this, but we have a very different philosophy when it comes to people coming to the door. And mine is don't come to my door. And Nick's is I am very friendly and I love talking to strangers, but it's.
who shows up at the door other than like
Oh, everybody, like, are you happy with your extermination service? And like, do you know who you're voting for? And we've been helping your neighbors with their lawn, and should you sign up for a service? Like, as soon as you buy a house, then it's just like this endless parade of door-to-door solicitors. And Nick is very nice to them.
yeah,
No, Citi doesn't have a reconsideration line. They have nothing. There used to be like you could send a letter to their executive offices in South Dakota, but if you had like received a targeted email or something or a pre-approval letter, but like, yeah. Um, this is a good question. Like, is there a reason to be concerned that credit limits would be tightened on my card with Chase if I apply for another Chase card given the current climate? It's actually two separate questions. So whether or not you apply for another card, you could see your credit limits tightened. It's part of this, like banks are looking to reduce their exposure. And um, if you have a lot of credit that you don't generally use, I would not be surprised if it's already happened or will happen of just as they go through and review and be like, oh my gosh, we gave this person a $25,000 credit line on this card. They never use more than $1,000 of it. We're going to drop it down to 5,000.
And then, yeah, exactly. And especially, I mean, if you can at least put some spending on a card, it helps. I mean, they could still lower your credit line if you're only using, 1,000 of a 30,000 line, but it's much more likely that they would lower your limit or close your account if you haven't made a single purchase on it in, a year or months or whatever it is. So try to keep some spending on cards, and that would minimize your odds.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, somebody transferred a lot of points Kevin had to Flying Blue for award tickets to Africa. They obviously canceled. They've got 300,000 points sitting in Flying Blue. What's the best use, do you think?
So, and they asked also something about first class, if I recall correctly, when I was reading earlier. Yeah, so that's not. So first class, unfortunately, Flying Blue is not happening. They don't allow SkyTeam partner redemptions, and the only way you can redeem first class on Air France is if you have status in the Flying Blue program. So unless you're going to go for that, it's not worth it, or it's not possible. And it's probably not worth going for status just for first class, especially because they're charging 220,000 plus miles for one-way first class ticket. So, I mean, Flying Blue is very useful still for transatlantic in the future, whenever that happens. Air France and KLM, most of their award space is released exclusively to members of the Flying Blue program and not to partners. So it's great because they have a lot of award availability when other programs wouldn't. So that would be my go-to option is just Air France, KLM across the Atlantic, or if you're going to Africa or India or anywhere
They also have a good chart to South America for flights on Aeromexico, if that's something that you're looking at doing, and it's like really low fees for the most part.
At least they have more reasonable fees to begin with than British Airways, I mean, and Lufthansa.
Right.
Because Lufthansa and British Airways both are like 700 or 800 one way in business or first class to Europe from the US, versus Flying Blue is like 100 something or $200.
Yeah, much better. Much better. What would you say is a good card for a college student? I'm looking for the question. The person who asked, well, I'm looking for the question. Let us know if you have credit established already or if you're getting started from complete scratch. And I will look for posting the questions, but like a good card for a college student in general.
So I feel like it was yesterday, even though it was 12 years ago that I got my first credit card, but we'll pretend it was yesterday. And so my general tips, because the challenge with anything related to getting a credit card is getting your first card is really tough because nobody wants to extend you credit if you haven't had it. And at the same time, if nobody's going to give you credit, how the hell are you supposed to prove that you are a worthy credit card user? So my general tip is either to go with a specific student credit card. It sucks that the rewards aren't great. You probably get very few rewards, but apply specifically for a student credit card if you can. And then make sure you put some purchases on it every month, but like keep your credit utilization below 20% ideally. So in other words, if your credit limit's $1,000, don't spend more than $200 a month, or at least pay off so it gets below the $200 amount before your statement closes. Otherwise, if you've already had a student card or if you have an established credit score, I always recommend Amex first. I find Amex cards are generally much easier to be approved for if you have good credit than Chase or Citi. I got, when I was 18 or 19, instant approvals on multiple Amex cards, while I got rejected for Chase cards for quite a while. So
yeah,
start with that.
But the thing is with Amex, you were an authorized user on your dad's credit card, and that did have some weight with Amex. So somebody who's starting right now may not have that benefit.
That's true. Even so, they're much better with instant approvals in general. It's definitely true that I benefited from that. But
and the fact that Amex offers charge cards rather than credit cards too, so it's a little bit different.
Yep.
That gives you a little bit more options. If you're starting from complete scratch, the Capital One credit card is like their Journey Student Rewards is a pretty good option. It doesn't have an annual fee and it doesn't have any foreign transaction fees. So if you're looking to study abroad, that can be a good option. And Chase just started a Freedom Student credit card, which is not as great, but does start maybe opening up a relationship with Chase. Would be one to look at. But If you're like getting ready to study abroad or something, I would get the Journey card because it's the only one that you can get with no annual fee and no foreign transaction fees if you can't get an Amex. Yep. Oh, and Danielle's pointing out that a Bank of America credit card, if you have a checking account with them already, can be a good option. That's true. They do have some student cards as well, or they have their like travel card. Their co-brand cards are a little harder to get than their other cards if you are starting out with newer credit.
The Amex Plat is surprisingly easy to be approved for because you would think, people think, oh, you need a really high income or, you need to be whatever to get it. But it is, even as a college student, sometimes I'm not saying you should get it because it does have a high annual fee, but surprisingly easy to be approved for.
Yeah, it's interesting in general.
Because usually premium cards require a higher level of credit worthiness, but that seems to be the Maxi Ford.
Yeah. Okay. What Citi transfer partners would you use to get to Hawaii?
Okay, so this is one of those things where there is, the absolute best value, and then there is what is easy to book and whatever. So there are lots of good options. I mean, I think the first thing to keep in mind is airfare to Hawaii is often very cheap. So take a look at how much ticket costs, because if it's, $250 or $300 round trip, which we do sometimes see from the West Coast, you might be better off just, using whatever, paying it off somehow otherwise, either paying cash or using points to offset the cost. As far as transfer partners go, Turkish Airlines is great for Star Alliance. They charge, is it 12,500 or something to Hawaii?
I think so, yeah.
But it sometimes is bookable online, but usually not, I think. Can't keep track of how often that changes. Otherwise, you could do Virgin Atlantic on Delta, and that is also a reasonable-ish cost. See, Delta, yeah.
And this is all, just to be clear, like this is all assuming that you're flying economy. If you want to fly a premium cabin to Hawaii, you are realistically looking at cash or a cash equivalent redemption option because there's just no availability.
It's funny with Hawaii flights, you're exactly right, how like paid fares are often very reasonable. Like it's very normal to see a $500 one-way paid first class fare to Hawaii, yet there's very rarely award space, which seems a little counterintuitive, but I get it. There's enough leisure demand of people willing to pay that, and they'd rather do that than have people redeem miles. But
Yeah. And like sometimes it can make sense. We had a client who they were in New York and they booked the New York Honolulu on Hawaiian, and it was a bit, there was like one ticket available at Saver and the other one at Standard, but it still ended up shaking out to being, what they felt was a reasonable redemption given the ways that they earn miles and redeem them. But it would be hard to say it's like the value option in any way.
And then Singapore Airlines is a great value on Alaska if you can fly nonstop. It's been so long, I don't even know what the exact mileage cost is for these redemptions because it's not as straightforward as a British Airways distance-based award chart where you know exactly what it is. But I think is it 12.5 or something? It's a good deal. So anyway, that gives you options across Star Alliance, SkyTeam-ish, British Airways Avios. That's not transfer partners with Citi, but that's obviously a great option for either Alaska or American as well.
Yeah, so you definitely want to check availability before you start transferring. I think that's maybe the key thing. And yeah, it's very difficult to find, especially if you are not in a city that has nonstop service to the Hawaiian Islands. And also right now, like Hawaii is complicated. I would go to Hawaii, but they'd be on my list of like places that are handling it. And so I feel like if we got to the point where they were willing to let me in, I would feel confident that it was a good decision versus other places where it's like just the fact that you're willing to let me visit there, like Florida, perhaps, suggests that maybe you shouldn't be opening Disney World. Like just the fact that you think it's a good idea suggests that maybe it's not. Yeah, I'm picking fights on Twitter about that today. Okay, so lounges at airports and hotels have been very buffet heavy over the years, which makes sense from like a cost perspective and a convenience perspective. What do you think of the future of food service formats? And does that impact whether or not you keep some of these cards that give you access to those benefits?
So specific to credit cards offering lounge benefits, I've never kept those cards because of like the snack towers of sadness, as Tiffany so eloquently said at one point. Because of the terrible food selection, that's not the reason I do it, because it's somewhere to sit. So I don't know how much it would even. I don't even know in general, I guess, how much food service impacts my perception of lounges, short of like, the Lufthansa first class terminal or some amazing lounge. But for just standard lounges, like food is never much to get excited about. Though obviously, as a Delta flyer, you have it better than us American flyers do.
In
As far as
some airports, I have to say, like it's actually that's really interesting. Like the West Coast, like Seattle and LA Sky Clubs have different catering. When I come like to see you and I have to connect in Atlanta, there's literally nothing I can eat in the Sky Clubs in Atlanta or in Minneapolis. It's just all the gluten. So it becomes like a useless benefit.
So as far as the actual service goes, I would say we'll probably see airlines go to two extremes, and the one extreme is like American serving snack boxes, and like I can see them offering essentially what they have now, except in like pre-packaged containers or just small things that can't as easily be touched. And then I think there's a nice way to do it, which is, what Qantas is doing, where they have like a buffet with a server, but so you can't touch it. I mean, I don't think we're at the point where we can do that here. But more importantly, they have servers coming around with like hot food options that you can take or ask for off the tray. And I think that's obviously a very nice way to do it. I don't think we're suddenly going to see Admiral's Club serving complimentary hot food served, by a lounge attendant, but it'd be nice.
Yeah, but they could do things even like what are the lounges that you have access to with Amex? The escape
Centurion?
lounges,
Oh, Escape, yes.
where they
They,
have like a lot of things in small portions.
yep,
That's like an investment in servingware,
yep.
but a lot of the same structure is, it's less contact. So maybe you'd see something like that rather than just like here's a mountain of cheese.
I mean, I'm curious how the costs of these various things compare, because presumably the biggest cost otherwise is the preparation or staffing cost. Like it must take a while at escape lounges. Like how do they actually individually portion the things? Because they're really cute. Like they actually
Yeah.
look like chef prepared. I'm sure they're not, but I'm saying they look like there's effort put into the presentation, which is different than where you see like the person come with the cart in the Admiral's Club and they just like throw cubes of cheese from a
This would
plastic.
actually be really interesting because our Mike's wife, Miranda, it used to be a process engineer for Sky Chefs, and how they would charge airlines was based off of things like the number of cuts required, because it's all of you figure out the labor cost of something. So it gets back to like the having pieces of nuts rather than whole nuts. So like there's a cost associated to it, but like how much greater is the cost? It would be really interesting
Yeah.
to be like, how do you figure those things out? Yeah, she's told stories of like, oh, we can reduce your catering costs by, rather than having carrots this way, like we'll cut them this way, because then that's one cut rather than five, and it's the same, quantity of carrot on the plate, but this
Interesting.
presentation is infinitely less expensive.
Makes sense.
These are fun
Yeah,
questions. Let's do more fun questions. Or you have something you are about to
well,
rant
no, it's
about?
just that what Mark said is interesting. It'll be interesting to see if or when Flagship and Polaris lounges reopen, because when it comes to this, there's two factors. There's when does, and first of all, Polaris and Flagship lounges are the premium lounges offered by American United, which are for international premium passengers. Because there's two factors here. There's when does demand recover to the point that there is, you know, need, or that the space cannot be covered by Admirals clubs. And then there's the other aspect of it, which is these places are known for, like Flagship lounges, for example, have huge buffets of hot food, which at this point is not happening. So Polaris lounges, they have the benefit of what they've a restaurant area. So, but it only has 20 tables, so that won't cover everyone. But at least they had the right idea. Versus Flagship lounges was so buffet heavy that I don't know how they'll adapt. That'll be. I wonder. I would be shocked. Or do they? That's true. I mean, I would
Right,
be
because
shocked.
that's the thing that I think is really interesting. Like, how will our expectations change?
Yeah.
Like, when Jimmy and I were putting together that list of like hotels that people might want to go to in the US,
Yeah.
like luxury looks a little different this year because literally, you would never before have been like, I would desire a motorway style motel where I
Mhm.
have exterior access to my room, right? Like that would never have been something you'd be like, "Hmm." And now, like, you could market that. Like, if you're a Best Western owner, you should be
Yep.
marketing no lobby, like zero contact hotels, because it's just luxury is a little different now.
That's so true. I was trying to figure out somewhere to go with my mother, and she is a smoker, which it drives me nuts, but whatever. I mean, I accept it. And so my issue with potentially going anywhere with her was the number of times she would have to walk through the lobby to go smoke versus just, being able to
Go
go
directly
outside
outside.
from your room directly. Like there's nothing at this point nicer than an exterior door. So I wonder if we'll see new hotels designed that way. I mean, I don't know how long this all will, if this is just a new way of living forever or just years or whatever. But curious if we see a new like limited service brand all around like exterior doors and
Right. Craig is saying like premium motels, a new category. It's actually sort of a smart idea. Like, I do not want to be in the hotel business, but given the resurgence of mid-century modern style, vintage things in general, and the Great American Road Trip, like there's some really dilapidated motels out there that you could do a refresh on, and they'd be super cute. And the infrastructure is very conducive to what people are wanting right now.
that is a great idea. I mean, we should. I mean, come on, Marriott has how many brands? 30 plus, and they
Right.
come on now.
And we have
Every
nothing else
hotel
to
brand.
do. So, like, we should just go ahead and buy a series of motels. I could style them. I mean, Ford could style them too, but then it'd be like we'd spend 10,000 more dollars per room. But sorry. Hi, Ford. Um,
Well, we found a new TV show, which is amazing, by the way. Highly recommended. Because
oh, Craig has a
747.
name, Motel 1000. I love it.
Hey, isn't there Hotel 1000 in Seattle? That sounds like a
Because that's
potential.
like the address. This is motel, though. Motel.
I know, but I'm, you know, sure they would argue just like the
Right.
Delta and American Airlines flagship
Craig, Ben
loss.
doesn't get the joke about it being a Motel 6 and instead being a Motel 1000, but that's okay.
Wait, what?
Right. You
What
can
am
go
I not
Google
getting?
Motel 6s. That's
I get
okay.
the Motel 6 reference. No,
Okay.
I get that. That's well. There's a 747. I have to see what it is. It is. Oh, wow! It's a Cargo Lux 747-8 coming from Atlanta. 1 hour and 19 minutes. That is nice. Cool. So, very cool. If anyone has
Well, I'm
any other
super excited about our hotel chain idea. That sounds great.
Motel 1001, there you go. That's it. I mean, there has to be. This really seems like the ideal time to, hotel brands spend so much time creating these BS brands that have like no actual differentiation, but they think they can get people
Hmm.
on board with it. This is the time for Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt to innovate, come up with a new brand. People will buy that stuff up.
Well, and that's the
Hotel.
thing. Like, there are tons of these properties, but they currently exist under like the Best Western brand. And like sometimes there's like a Best Western Plus, but like nobody actually knows what that means. Or they're like a choice random thing. And, you know, people just can't see them. Oh, sorry, John, I didn't see your question because I know I should have seen it because it was in the super chat, then that got harder to read. So somehow, Ben, and just like the bowels of the internet are regurgitating that Bravo jet set
Yes.
series.
Oh boy. Okay. Yes.
The question is like, how did that come about? Which I am also one of the inquiring minds who would like to know, like, what the hell happened there?
Oh, okay. Okay. The Bravo things goes back a while. So,
Because as I watched that unfold in real time each day, I was like, what is even happening here? Why, what? This
it was a
escalated
mess.
quickly.
It was very different than it was initially supposed to be because like they were switching up their digital team as this was happening. Uh, so a few years back, Bravo. I mean, the way all this works is there you have people who work in production or production companies or whatever, and they pitch ideas. So they had pitched something about the frequent flyer world. So long story short, we were going to do like a pilot type thing for this, which involved flying. It was about frequent flyer miles, points, just generally hotel and airline life, the cool things like that. People don't realize flying can be fun. It was a cool concept. It changed a lot in the process. So we ended up going on like a 2.5 week trip all over. It was originally supposed to be mainly video, but then somehow it ended up being like 30 blog
That's like
posts
the
for
best
Bravo's
part.
like
Yeah,
travel
30
blog.
blog posts that weren't on 1 mile at a time.
No, I'm
And we
like,
were
wait a
just
second.
like
I read
writing them
enough
for a
blog
site
posts.
that got like literally no traffic.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I
not,
think it's interesting to say like these types of things happen all the time.
yeah.
And like we don't really talk about it. Like you're very humble, and that's one of I think your most endearing qualities. But where various media outlets are like, hey, like let's do a thing, and they start off doing the thing, and they're like, wow, this whole world is so much cooler than we would have ever have thought. So now let's do like 800 things, and then at the end of the day, you can actually still only do one thing. It just never ends up being the first thing once like the 800 become a possibility.
No, that's exactly right. And I think part of the issue is it is so outside of this world, people obviously don't understand how miles and points and all this work. And it's cool to be able to show other people how it works, but they never, when you try to explain to them, like, oh, I don't think this is going to work well because of this, they don't listen
Right.
because they think they know what they're doing. And then
Right.
afterwards,
And
like,
they latch
oh,
on to things that are
not,
challenging.
yes. So anyway,
Yeah.
that is the, uh, Paul asked, what is the show you were about to reference? Okay, there's an amazing show I just started watching because we've run out of every show. It's called Smothered. It's an old, TLC is the best. I mean, the Learning Channel, I learned so much on there from 90 Day Fiance to, actually just 90 Day Fiance. Smothered. It is about mothers and daughters who are like very close in a creepy way. Like the fact that, not like in a, actually maybe in a creepy, full on creepy way. They like party together.
Like
They get
super
lip
enmeshed.
injections. Yes, and like the mother is angry like that the daughter has a boyfriend because it's taking away from their time together. Very entertaining. So anyway, season 1, episode 3 is where we're at. So, any other questions not related to that?
Talking about more TV stuff. Um, Current elite status. What do you have? Show me your cards.
Well, cards. I mean, we're all digital nowadays, right? So I have, which you know what? I'm happy it's an easy year for status that we don't have to requalify, but like there is a sense of satisfaction out of that last stay or that last flight where you get over the threshold. Of course, I'm happy it's not the case this year, but stuff. So anyway,
I would be happy to send you some recommendations of other things that you could be doing with like milestones and goalposts, like helping people register to vote or like other
they're
things where
not
you can be like,
mutually
yes,
exclusive.
I crossed that threshold if you're just looking for that kind of like adrenaline rush.
I mean, 15 years into this, though, it's a yearly pattern of
Oh yeah, for
being
sure. And
so
I
used
and I
to it.
understand that it's something that is lacking in your life currently.
So for me, I care less about status of stuff than I used to. So for me, it's just American Executive Platinum, and then I mean, with hotels, what you have through Hilton Aspire Diamond status, IHG Platinum status. The only hotel status I really care about is Hyatt Globalist status, and I earn that through a combination of credit card spending and mostly stays. And then I have Marriott Titanium status. Up until last year, I had Ambassador status. But that goes back to like when I lived in hotels full time, I easily spent 100 nights a year at Marriott versus it just wasn't worth. Like I want to be home, not 100 nights a year at a Marriott. So
Plus the like dollar spend.
yes, the
It's
twenty
like
thousand.
why
That
would I
was
give
not
that much money to Marriott? That's,
exactly.
yeah.
That was not worth it.
Um, so if somebody follow up talking about cards from earlier, if somebody gets declined for a Citi card, when should they reapply? Or should they just hold off until Citi starts loosening up their criteria?
So there's the answer in the past, and then there's I don't actually know what's going on right now, so it's hard to say like what their process is at the moment. In the past, I would say usually if I'm declined for a credit card in general, and I think that I'm somehow worthy of getting it, I would wait at least 2 to 3 months to apply again. So I think it varies on the situation, but in the case of Citi, if you do get declined, I would probably just wait until something changes on a macro level economically, because I assume whatever their process is right now will stick for a bit. So that is my thoughts.
Yeah. Do you want to explain? You just mentioned having IHG status, and Paul is asking, like, why do you care about at all about IHG status and
Great question. I
clarify that a
really
bit?
don't. IHG is I don't want to say terrible, but like there's not much to get excited about because the good IHG brands are Kimpton and Intercontinental, and for Intercontinental they have the separate ambassador program. So really, there's not much value. The reason I mentioned it even is because I have the IHG Premier card, and like I do find once or twice a year IHG is the best option. Like, and it's just once or twice a year. So for that, the platinum status comes in handy because I'm staying at the hotels anyway. So for example, when we took my dad on a safari last August, the Intercontinental Johannesburg Airport is the hotel at the airport, so you can't beat that for the convenience. Like we weren't going to stay anywhere else. Versus in Beirut, redeeming points at the Intercontinental there was a great option because it's one of the best hotels in the city and it was a great deal on points. So that's the extent to which I care about Intercontinental or IHG. I don't otherwise seek out
Which
their
is
property.
interesting because you used to be
Oh,
like when we first met, you were like the biggest IHG fanboy.
okay. This is okay. We're running. Okay, 60 seconds here. Let me explain.
We're
The
allowed to run
great
over.
the greatest thing in the history of the world ever was back in the day Intercontinental Royal Ambassador status. So Royal Ambassador was Intercontinental's. And if anybody, by the way, as I tell the story, knows the old Royal Ambassador thing, please say it now because like I will be happy that you also were in on this fun. So back in the day, Royal Ambassador, that's Intercontinental's like invitation only status. There's no published criteria. Anyway, when you were an Intercontinental Royal Ambassador, you could nominate someone else to be a Royal Ambassador. But the part that made zero sense is that the people who were nominated to be Royal Ambassador could also nominate someone else. It was a never-ending thing. So, I mean, it was the best thing ever because, like, I never had to do anything, but I got Royal Ambassador every year.
Well, you had to be charming. You had to convince like at least one other
I,
sucker to share their invite code with you, which,
exactly.
you
Well,
know, that's a struggle for a shy introvert. Let's be honest.
it's
You put
true.
some effort into it.
And that's true. And Royal Ambassador was amazing because back in the day, I don't know if it's still the case. I don't think it is fully, but you know, you used to get unlimited free minibar access. It's like I was under 21. No,
Yeah.
partly I was under 21. I mean, so I enjoyed the juices and other stuff. No alcohol. I really didn't drink when I was under 21. Anyway, absolutely amazing. And also what I loved is Intercontinental was like the first hotel group that really had guaranteed benefits because, you know, even like 4 p.m. guaranteed checkout wasn't a thing at Marriott or Hyatt or anything at this point. But Intercontinental had guaranteed late checkout, guaranteed early check-in, which no other brand still has. They had guaranteed upgrades, so you always got at least a 2-category upgrade. Anyway, fantastic program at the time, especially given that the only requirement was to get a referral certificate you could
And I
reuse.
think especially because at that point in time, like your travels were so heavily focused on Asia because it was
Yes.
like Aeroplan, you know, first
Yes.
class
Oh,
awards for
good
like
day.
nothing to go to Bali. And there were like legitimately nice properties with great benefits.
Such good
Versus
times. And, you
now,
know,
like if you were going to Bali, I mean, one, I don't think you'd go to Bali. Like if you were going to Indonesia, I'd be like, hey, can we go to Java instead? And that'd be
yes,
really fun.
that's
And like even then, if you were going to Denpasar, you wouldn't want to stay at the Intercontinental because there's now like many better hotels there, and the Intercon is the finest hotel from 25 years ago.
exactly. They don't have very many exciting properties anymore, but back in the day, they were quite nice. And just it was always fun because, you know, they had to manually take off the mini bar bill at checkout. And, like there was a
Yeah,
certain thrill to, as a maximizer, to getting as many drinks out of it as you could. So, you
yeah.
know, you're like, you check out and there's $400 mini bar bill, and you're like, could you please take that off? And they're like, yes. And sometimes you could tell they were pissed off because like they had to click one at a
What
time to
every
remove
single
each drink.
time. Yeah.
Yep.
There, I mean, that is true. The value of like intercontinentals in certain markets, I think, is still there, which is still helpful. Like we stayed at an intercontinental in Cairo because it's one of the few hotels in the city that had rooms with 2 beds, and we were there with my niece, and pretty much everything else was like just all king beds. Period.
So
So
that's this has been fun. We've had a lot of good questions. We've already gone over, but this has been very fun. We'll have to do it again next week with more of this stuff because this is
maybe next week. Next week is my birthday, and maybe my birthday's not on Thursday, but I feel like maybe I'm not working.
it's close enough to Thursday. It's Friday, so you have to
Right. So I'm just saying,
take
like,
off.
there's
Okay.
a chance that maybe this isn't happening next week, but we'll let you know. So
Well, thank you guys for
yeah, thank
joining
you guys so
us.
much.
This
This
has
was
been,
super fun.
have a good evening and happy weekend or whatever it is. Friday. I mean,
It's
I don't know what
basically
day
a
of the week it
weekend.
is.
Whatever.
But
What day is it is a bad question now. So
anyway, thank you
thank you
guys.
guys.